Okay. Meeting will come to order. Please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Chris, will you call the roll, please? Here.
Division 2,
Here.
Division 3,
Here.
Division 4,
Present.
Division 5.
Here.
We have a quorum. We're all present. Very good. Next, we'll have public comment on items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone either present or online that would like to comment? Oh, please come forward. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Daniel Wojak and I live on Lynn Lane in North Auburn. We have a problem with a bridge that PG&E built the bridge. There was a contract with the original landowner, which is Mr. Teagard in 1920. And in that agreement, PG&E agreed to install a crossing and then maintain it. And NID took over that canal and that contract. And you've been maintaining the bridge for all these years until recently. In 2022, I contacted NID to have them look at the bridge. It needed some maintenance. And I was told NID doesn't do bridges. Well, we have a contract. And it's been recorded with the county. And I was told it wasn't recorded, but it is. And there was other documents, 1967, that a new owner agreed to give NID access. And the agreement was that they would maintain the bridge again in 67. Now in 2022, they're saying, no, we don't. So the question is, are you going to maintain the bridge or not? And when I talk to the staff, they keep telling me we don't do bridges. So I'm here to ask you to consider doing the bridge. So
If you would give, it looks like you have some documents. If you would give those to Greg Jones, our
Mr. Jones is
manager.
with it.
Yes.
I've been contacting with.
Okay. Well, as you might know or may not know, when we take public comment on items not on the agenda, we are not able to engage
Right.
in a
I
conversation.
understand. It's Brown Act.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and I'm sure we can follow up.
Okay. I'd like to give you like 60 days and then get something back within 60 days. I think that would be sufficient time to, I mean, because this has been going on since 2022. And I don't want it to drag on for a long time.
Understood.
So 60 or 90 days, which I think should be plenty of time to
Greg,
discuss
I
it.
recommend we'll be in touch.
Okay.
thank you, sir. Thank you for your comment. Okay. Is there other comment? Oh, okay, good. Okay. We'll take the online comment from Cherie Crawford, please. Go ahead. Cherie, you go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
I received a letter. There's no date on this letter. I want to say maybe 4 to 6 weeks ago. It's entitled Continued Water Shortage Emergency Conservation Still Required. And within this letter, it says half of you, here are the 3 days a week you're able to water, and for the other half of you, here's the other 3 days you're able to water. And so to me it looks like you're asking us to voluntarily reduce our usage by 50%. And so I wonder if it wouldn't be fair then for you to reduce the invoice for 50% of the water usage, since we'll only be using half of it. Does that make sense?
Appreciate your comment. I think we'll have to have our Assistant General Manager, Greg Jones, get back to you on that. Cherie, do you have an address or phone number that you can share with us that he can get back in touch with you?
Absolutely. I am a customer of yours. You have my address.
Obviously.
You again. It's,
We'll look you up. We'll look you up, Sheree. Don't bother
Okay,
giving us your information.
Sheree, I'm hearing from our director of our water, Chip Close, that we will get back to you and they can look you up. So thank you. That way you don't have to tell the world online where you are. Actually, better idea.
Scams.
Yeah, I know,
I
better
do.
idea.
I
Perpetuate.
appreciate that. And a couple other things, if I
Yes.
may. If it doesn't make sense to the decision makers to reduce the premium or the payment for this season, then I would be interested in the voluntary inactive for emergency thing for the season, and I'd like to be reimbursed for what wasn't used. And finally, my idea would be, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's feeling this way. You know, when I pay for something, I'm interested in having the whole thing, not half of it. And oh wait, I'm a little bit nervous right now. My final question is, it has slipped my mind. And so I will be sure to speak with Greg Jones about it when I hear from him.
Well,
I'm sorry,
yes.
it just came back to me. If
Yes.
there's a hardship or a payment, a difference in the payment, pardon my ignorance, but I'm thinking that it's probably PG&E who is responsible for us to have this limited water usage, and it's been going on for over a year now. Perhaps we could invoice them for the difference when you return money to your customers.
Well, we appreciate your comments and you'll be hearing back from Assistant General Manager Greg Jones and Chip Close. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there other comments? Seeing none, then we will close public comment and move to special orders, and that will be our investment portfolio review. Are we ready for that, Chris? Are they online?
Do we have Michael online, I believe?
I am online.
Oh, good.
Good.
And I
Good
will-
morning. So this is our quarterly review of our financial package. Michael with PFM has been gracious with his time to be here today. So we'll go through the report that is in your packet and it's online. And Michael, take it away. I think we can see your screen.
Excellent. That was my first question. So you're ahead of the game there, and you see the title page, I assume, is the window I'm sharing?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, again, Mike Kronbetter, Relationship Manager with PFM Asset Management. I appreciate joining you today to discuss the first quarter investment report. I'll go ahead and start my video so you have some familiarity with my face as well. And I
Michael,
assume
can you enlarge to full screen what you have on your screen? We're only seeing
absolutely.
like 2/3 of it.
Let's do full screen. Is that helpful?
Well, now you see the whole thing, but you only see it in much smaller. Chris, is there anything you can do on your end? He's
To me,
running
it
it.
is
Okay.
it is nearly full screen on my screen, and I'm
Mhm.
sharing the window. Is this enlarged at all? I could go about it a different way as well.
You know
Let's
what?
It was
try one
better.
more.
It was better.
You know
about
what, you guys?
Seconds ago.
If you hit the X and take off
This one.
the participant.
I think might be your screen.
Oops,
That's weird.
that's weird.
Try sharing again, Michael. We lost your shared screen.
You bet. You bet.
There it
Is
is.
this helpful at all?
It's the same.
There.
Okay.
Might be as good as we're gonna get.
I think that is it, but
There you go.
I
there
went
we
ahead
go.
and
That's
shared
much
my
better.
screen, so it's as large as it can be on full screen, and I'm wondering if it might be a setting on the other side.
I think you're fine now, don't you?
Well, that's
Directors, are we
that's-
okay?
Yeah, that's as good as
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Okay. We got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, if there's any questions or we want to re-review anything later, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to address any questions that didn't become evident here. But again, I'm Mike Kronbetter, Relationship Manager with PFM Asset Management. Happy to be talking about the investment portfolio for the period ended March 31 for NID. So you should be seeing the current market themes now. And this will kind of guide the conversation just as a summary of things that we have seen over the period and things that we're looking forward to continue watching on behalf of the portfolio as we navigate a fairly uncertain time. Clearly, the first quarter began a period of increased volatility, largely attributed to, we believe, uncertainty surrounding various policies with the turn of the new administration. What may be characterized, I suppose, as a somewhat disorganized rollout of the tariffs and continued trade negotiations through the current quarter. The uncertainty and volatility has been attributed, in large part to that, and has led to a decline in investor and consumer sentiment on top of already elevated levels still where we began the period of inflation when we started the year. On a positive note, the labor market has remained steady and fairly resilient still, and has served as a nice tailwind through this more volatile period. Given the implication of what policies ultimately will be and the implications they'll have on the economy and the Fed decisions going forward, the Fed has elected to pause any changes with their interest rates for the year. They've left their expectations at 2 interest rate cuts for the year, although they haven't made any changes since December when they last reduced rates at that time. So the benchmark rate, their overnight target rate, has been left at 4.25% to 4.5%. And that's after reaching a peak last year of about 5.25% to 5.5%. So we did come down 100 basis points from the middle of last year, and we still sit there at that 4.25% to 4.5%. The Fed has, as I mentioned, retained its outlook for 2 additional rate cuts during the year, but those cuts continue to get pushed out further. We're now seeing even the market catch up with the Fed, believing there likely only will be 2 cuts this year, potentially even 1. It sits by the end of the year, sits between 1 and 2, but leaning toward that 2 quarter-point cuts. During the period, despite the still escalated inflation levels, it's interesting to note that while that would typically send interest rates higher, we saw a risk-off sentiment during the period that led to lower rates and higher market values in fixed income. So that played out well for your portfolio being a fully investment-grade portfolio, which we'll also take a look at. Just some anecdotes through this chart. What we saw at trepidation with that risk-off trade, investors kind of fleeing equities and risk assets in favor of just more stability in these high-grade fixed income securities. We can kind of see some evidence of that in this chart. On the left side, seeing the number of executive orders in the first month of President Trump's new administration versus prior administrations for the past 44 years. And certainly not to make a political statement or anything of that nature, but just really to highlight the swift and robust changes that the market and participants in the economy have had to kind of grapple with in regards to domestic and foreign policies. It's quite a shift and a lot to take in and try to assess how that will ultimately play out for the economy in time. And we're still looking at that right now, as is the Fed, as they've acknowledged. It's certainly led to uncertainty and about the aggregate impacts and how that will impact the U.S. and global economy overall. If you look and shift kind of to the top right, the Consumer Sentiment Index, that was driven lower. In fact, the April survey fell further from where this report was printed to 50.8, and that was the second lowest reading in the survey's history, going back to 1952. It's worth noting that the survey was done just prior to a lot of some of these kind of pause agreements with tariffs. So that took into account a lot of the uncertainty and concerns with the tariff policies that were being kind of thrown out there as negotiations were commencing with the other countries. So things more recently have softened and have begun to improve. The latest sentiment number comes out on Friday. So as we saw with confidence, the consumer confidence number yesterday, we do expect that to rise a bit with some softening in the tariff negotiations. And in the bottom right, expected change in prices 1 year forward. This actually hit a 7.3% in May, so even higher than 5%. And that was the highest reading since November of 1981. So clearly the markets believe that tariffs will have some type of inflationary impact. But again, some softening with the negotiations and some relaxing on, for example, the 90-day pause in negotiating with China has kind of put relaxed some of the anxiety on expectations going forward. Last quarter, we did talk about 4 items that we were watching in particular with the change of administration. And if you recall, those were taxes, immigration, deregulation, and tariffs. The most recent focus clearly has been on tariffs. Federal spending cuts has been a part of the discussion, and perhaps to an equal degree, immigration reform as well. Until most recently, this quarter, we've heard a bit more about the pro-growth policies, but still the priority has been the tariff and negotiating with our global trading partners. But the pro-growth policies are still of heightened interest, and they're talking about that with the tax reform and the current budget discussions. So that's something that will obviously have an equal and or opposite reaction to what we're looking at on the tariff side. But in terms of tariffs, because it's been such a large part of the first quarter impact to your portfolio, we focused on a few items here and just wanted to point out potential impacts from that activity. We didn't know at the time of the publication where things would be. Right now, I think I've heard a number thrown out, and it is still evolving, but the average tariff rate with trading partners would be about 13%. At the time of publication here, we were believing the tariff average rate might be in the 20s. So we were kind of highlighting what that looked like historically as a comparison to historical norms on tariffs, which would have been higher than the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, and a tariff of over 20% would be the highest in over a century. So clearly a dramatic shift in the way we are looking at trade activity with our partners. And what that means, the implications of tariffs on the left-hand side, a 10% increase in tariffs would lead to about a 0.8% increase in inflation. So as I mentioned earlier, right now, we're thinking the average is around 13%. That would be about a 1.04% increase to inflation, where we're already sitting above the Fed's preferred levels. That would be an unwelcome increase to prices of goods and services on consumers. Additionally, the economic impact of that 10% increase in tariffs would lead to about a 1.4% decrease in GDP. And again, at 13%, that comes to about a 1.82% decline in GDP. And we'll look at the impact of what we've seen in the first quarter on GDP already, because it does have a direct impact to GDP. Tariff revenues, we just note as well, $100 billion in new tariffs. Of course, that gets trickled down to the consumer. That equals about a 0.4% increase in income taxes, or about a 0.52% equivalent income tax at a 13% average. So all of these are being eyed by the Fed, but there's more than just tariff activity. Of course, there's other discussions with a budget right now and other immigration reform, all coming together but it's impossible to know where things eventually land, at least temporarily. So it's all part of the Fed's autonomy and independence, and they continue to reiterate they're very dependent on data. They're not a political organization. They're going to continue to watch the economy and manage expectations for the economy accordingly and appropriately. On the next page, I mentioned that the tariff activity has had a dramatic impact on GDP, quite an adjustment from what we were seeing last year when we were at that 3% range in growth that we show here on the right-hand chart for that third quarter in 2024, falling slightly in the fourth quarter, but still healthy at 2.4. Where we ended the year, so on December 31st, expectations for GDP are in the light blue dots for each of the quarters through 2025. And by the end of the quarter, we've shifted to the dark blue dots. Again, this was, at the time of publication, and where we ended up in the first quarter of 2025 was a negative 0.3%. And that negative 0.3% can be directly attributed to the left-hand side, where we saw a U.S. trade balance deficit hit records for the first quarter. In March, we hit a trade deficit of $140 billion as we imported significantly more than we exported, with the explanation being consumers and businesses trying to get ahead of price increases that would be expected from tariffs. So as we were negotiating and hearing about these high elevated tariff numbers, consumers and businesses were trying to pull forward inventories and purchases to pull forward demand and avoid higher prices in the future. So net deficits are a negative on GDP. They're subtracted from the GDP number. So absent of that, we think there would have been still a positive growth number, and we anticipate that going forward in future quarters. But in the meantime, as long as we're still advanced purchasing from other countries, as these negotiations evolve, we think that'll be a drag on GDP. I will say recessions have been defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, but it's been clear that the National Bureau of Economic Research, there are 3 Ds that they look at in terms of declaring a formal or formalizing the term recession to any period. It's the depth is the first D, which is the magnitude of peak to trough decline in measures like output and employment and income. There's also duration, which is the length of time. Some might say 2 quarters. And there's also diffusion, which is how widespread the impact is to various industries. So 1 quarter alone doesn't cause over concern. In fact, the markets have been recovering since that came out. And we'll get a second read on the GDP this Friday, which might modify that as well. GDP is typically reported 3 times. There's an advance read and then 2 revisions in subsequent months. So we get our, second revision on Friday. That'll kind of be of interest to the markets as well. And the Fed's own view, what we're looking at here, we tend to include this in all quarters because we want to know what the Fed is thinking, because it will directly impact the portfolio. So for each of the sections here, we have a light shaded area, a light shaded bar that represents the prior Fed's projections, which were printed in December, in contrast to their projections published in March in the dark shaded areas. So they look at 4 areas with their summary of economic projections. And this is not the market's projections, but the Fed's own. And the 2 things I'd like to highlight here are really the bottom 2 charts. When inflation rises, the Fed typically will combat rising inflation with higher interest rates to slow demand down. But what we saw is on the left-hand side, despite higher inflationary expectations from their prior, that's going in the wrong direction. They're trying to get inflation down to that 2% target. Yet their expectations are a rise in inflation, which we feel might be attributed, of course, to the tariffs. Despite that, they haven't changed their outlook on their own expectations of what they plan to do with interest rates over the year, largely because, as we note from Fed Chair Powell in the quote above, there's a bit of inertia when it comes to what they were projecting in March. They didn't make any changes because there's too much uncertainty to determine whether or not they should increase rates, leave rates changed, or continue to plan to reduce 2 quarter point cuts by end of year. So they haven't changed that despite higher expectations on inflation. So it continues to be data dependent. Their favorite inflation measure also comes out on Friday, their personal consumption expenditure. So that's one to keep an eye on if you have interest. Treasury yields. This is always my favorite chart because in a chart, it really defines what the portfolio did. When the dotted line is above the solid line, the dotted line being the US Treasury yield curve at different tenors, what the yields you can expect from a Treasury. And the dotted line is where we began the quarter, and the solid line is where we ended the quarter. And when that dotted line is above, that means yields fell over the quarter to these lower levels in the solid line. And when yields fall on a fixed income portfolio, that's supportive of higher market values for the portfolio. So over the period, rates fell between the 2 and 30 year about 35 to 43 basis points as investors fled to the stability and safety of high grade fixed income. And that was in the phase of higher inflationary expectations. So it does show kind of what was driving behavior. And it was really that kind of trepidation from investors that wanted safety during the period. And that has, of course, if you're following the markets, that has eased, at least on the equity side. Things have recovered in large part. Where we might compare that to rates as of last night and this morning, between the 2 and 30, well, 2 and 10 year, the line, if we were to draw it today, would fit nicely between the two bars that we see here on the page. And it's really that longer term, more toward the 20 and 30 year yields that would be slightly above the dotted blue line, but still in the 1 year range comfortably, which is shown in the shadow range. You know, I'll take this opportunity to address Moody's downgrade of U.S. government debt, which occurred on May 16th. That brought the U.S. government rating of treasuries down to a AA1 from the prior AAA. That AAA since 2023 had carried a negative watch, meaning it was on watch for downgrade. And by making this move on May 16th to a AA1, they removed the negative outlook or a negative watch and moved it to a stable rating. And that's in line with S&P and Moody's. They were ahead of the curve, if you will, in that downgrade. And that was largely, you know, they cited fiscal deficits, high deficit to GDP and debt to GDP ratios. So a lot going in there, and not a huge surprise to the market. That didn't cause rates to move dramatically one way or another. I think it was largely expected and kind of formalized the view that they were looking to make through their review over the last year and a half. But overall, for first quarter, really solid returns for fixed income investors, which we'll look at again. You can reference this as we look to your portfolio in a few slides. On the far left for the first quarter, U.S. Treasuries performed very well, 2%, as investors again bought Treasuries for the flight to safety period. Corporates did not, well, they performed about where Treasuries were simply because during the period, there was a slight spread in rates from where you could buy a corporate versus a Treasury to that same maturity date. While Treasury yields fell, corporate yields did not fall as dramatically because investors were opting for Treasuries over corporates during the period, which we see as kind of a healthy move. Spreads had been at historic lows on corporates, meaning the value you get from that corporate bond is what the spread measures. And we saw last year's spreads being very tight, not getting rewarded for that corporate risk. So we think it was kind of a healthy thing that spreads widened and offered investors new opportunity to enter the market. And we did look to buy a corporate bond during the period in your portfolio. For the past year, really solid returns for fixed income, U.S. Treasuries alone returning 5.5%. And we'll look at this relative to your portfolio again in just a moment. Our view over the next 6 to 12 months shifted in two categories. We're now in neutral on everything. But unsurprising, we shifted our economic growth expectations downward, just given that GDP discussion I recently presented, and the financial conditions just being uncertain to know. It might be unfair to keep it in a slightly positive tone, knowing that so much is changing and we just don't know where things ultimately land. So we're, along with the Fed, wait and see. Not feeling negative, not feeling exuberant, just kind of wait and see, but having that tailwind of the strong labor market that continues as well through the current quarter. Are there any questions on the market or economic update before we review the portfolio?
Yeah, Michael, Rich Johansson.
Oh.
Yeah, I would like to have a one-on-one sometime just to get more of what you're looking at. It seems to me that you're relying a lot on the Federal Reserve and their forecasting. And yet, historically, they have been late to the game. They were late to raise interest rates to head off the inflation of almost 9%. Here, we experienced a much higher inflation on pipe and everything. And I think they're late because they're always looking at data that was generated 2 months ago. And I don't think they've done a very good job of, one, of forecasting, and two, I don't know, I'll just put it out there. I think there's a liquidity problem in America and everywhere. And the report was that 50 U.S. Treasuries tried to sell $50 billion of 20 and 30-year-old bonds, and there wasn't any takers. And the day the guy announced it, U.S. Treasury tried to sell 16 billion and had very lukewarm attention. And interest rates today are up to, on the 30-year are at 5%, and on the 10-year, 4.5%. So I won't get into the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. I don't give it much. I mean, it certainly had an effect on the Depression, but it was more a liquidity problem that caused that. And I'd just like to have a little more of a one-on-one with you sometime just to get into depth on this, because either I'm missing something, but I just don't want to see our portfolios based on the Federal Reserve. I'm not sure how much ammo they have left in the gun.
Yeah. Happy to coordinate a one-on-one discussion and address concerns and thoughts and ideas. We don't, well, certainly we want to know what the Fed is saying, because they do have a significant impact in moving markets. When they come out with commentary with their, 8 meetings per year, they'll follow with commentary, and that becomes more important than the rate itself, because I think by the time the meetings occur, the market largely knows what the Fed is positioning for. But because we're exclusively a fixed income portfolio by California law, we have very limited options of what we can and can't buy in the portfolio. So that does really, lead to a significant reliance on what expectations are for rates going forward. The market is pricing in rates out the curve for what they believe the average rates will be, plus a term premium and a credit premium, a fair adjustment to what the issuer is. But within those nuances, our portfolio can't go beyond 5 years. It must be A or better. So we're in a very tight bucket of what we can and can't buy in the portfolio. Maybe another item your question might lead to is, what's the proper duration? If you're suggesting maybe rates kind of get out of control, rise more than the Fed is anticipating, that might lead to maybe recommending a shorter portfolio. Then we're currently in a 0 to 5 year. So we're kind of laddered out, and we're continuing to diversify better. We are a bit short of our benchmark. I'll also talk with you about that in a moment, because we took we began managing the portfolio not terribly long ago. And so we have a lot of maturities coming up in the next, say, 1 or 2 years that will allow us to kind of look to see what changes are happening with the economy, what interest rates are doing, where it makes sense to reinvest those and redeploy those assets out the curve, with sensitivity to the cash needs of NID as well and their capital projects coming up. So, I have talked a lot about the Fed. It is important because they control fixed income rates. The market is responding to what they say. What I was going to mention earlier is one word in their commentary following their 8 meetings per year has a huge impact. If they shift from what might otherwise be a rather seemingly harmless change, it could really move rates one way or another. So they're very cautious on how they modify their statement every meeting. But I certainly appreciate your perspective, and I'm not I agree with you. I think it's important to understand the economy. And while I've talked a lot about the Fed and what their expectations are, it's not the only thing we're relying on, but it does play an important factor in the market. So it's something that we like to be sure to include as part of the presentation as well.
Yeah. And I appreciate the restrictive lanes that you need to operate on, and I'm not advocating to change those. I'm just saying that there's another factor of liquidity and trade deficit. I understand a lot of balls in the air. You have to account for each one of them. I just think there's another view out there that interest rates are going to continue to go up with liquidity problems.
Well, I appreciate the question, and perhaps I could work with Jennifer and Sandra to schedule a time, and we can get a strategy guy on, and we can have a deeper dialogue. And anybody who might want to participate is welcome to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just in summary, with the portfolio, we're at 116 million as of quarter end on March 31st. That's up about 11 million from the end of year. And a big part of that was not the stellar performance that we had, although the portfolio did well for the quarter, but there was a contribution from NID through the period to bring it to that 116 million. Overall, we are deallocating from agencies. We don't find tremendous value in agencies. The spreads are very tight to treasuries. So we're working our way out of existing holdings and agencies and shifting more to US treasuries. CMBS, commercial mortgage-backed securities, which are agencies, but a structure of agencies that actually do have a nice value for the now AA rating that they are. We continue to find and look for opportunities with corporates. We bought one over the quarter, and negotiable CDs, really little change. And down below is the maturity distribution of the portfolio. We really should just take off 5 to 10 years. Those 3 right columns, we're not permitted to buy anything, so it's very, very relieving to see 0% there. I'll have that corrected next quarter. But we are working to reallocate that 0 to 2 year kind of more evenly through the 5-year period, in line with the benchmark that we're targeting. I mentioned the corporate purchase. We did buy an Adobe single A rated bond in the first quarter, adding to that corporate number of corporate issues in the portfolio. We did bring down federal agencies from 61% to 54% during the period, in part with a maturity and also sales of those. We do see a number of those maturing in total over the next 16 months. So that will be a favorable opportunity to continue investing at these what we believe are still historically high rates over the past 15 years. Again, a different
Michael?
look. Yes, sir.
I got Michael, I have a question on, we have a lot of money in home loan banks, mortgages. And with the real estate economy the way it is, how does that affect our portfolio?
The federal agencies are, they trade right in line with treasuries because they're seen as, that they've always been very close. They're implicitly backed, if you will, by the U.S. government. U.S. agencies in the state of California have no limitation in terms of allocation of the portfolio. So where California is a conservative, does have a very conservative investment policy in terms of credit ratings, diversification standards, maximum maturities, and so on, agencies don't have a limit because of the perceived alignment they have with the U.S. government's initiatives on supporting the housing market. Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae during the financial crisis were put into conservatorship by the government. So at the moment, all those proceeds of any earnings above needed for operations continue to be swept to the government. I've seen quotes this week from President Trump looking to kind of do away with that system because it's it was kind of a interim solution that's lasted quite a bit of time, but the government loves the money that they're getting from those entities. So they put, so there is discussion about taking those companies public again and figuring out a way to still support the housing market with affordable financing for homeowners. So, I don't think, I think if there was some kind of transition to that, there would probably be some kind of grandfather clause or some period of time that there would transition to that. Kind of a period of time to get to that goal. I don't think it could happen overnight. Policies, I think, would be disrupted, and California would, need to address what it should do with the allocation to agencies in terms of limitations. But they do carry the same rating as the U.S. government.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Are there any others?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, on this page, we talked about the total market value in the portfolio. I said 116. This is showing 115. There's a balance in camp that we're not that's not included in this particular total market value here. So here we're looking at total managed portfolio, and there's some CDs that have not matured yet as well that would be added to this total market value that that since we inherited the portfolio, we're allowing to mature, and then we'll add that to the market value as well. Overall duration of the portfolio is at 1.89 years. And as I mentioned, we do have a benchmark. I said 0 to 5, and I apologize. It's a 1 to 5 year US Treasury index. So we are lagging in terms of duration, the benchmark index, and we are doing that because of the securities that are maturing in the next 1 to 2 years that will have the opportunity to continue reinvesting and then continue to extend the duration as appropriate for targeting this 2.48 year duration in the portfolio. We also want to be mindful of those capital expenditures in the next couple of years that I had alluded to earlier. So it is a careful walk. Overall, proud of the yield at cost in the portfolio at 2.43, continuing to rise. That was an increase of about 27 basis points from the prior quarter end, or about 0.27%. We began the quarter at 2.16. So as we're able to continue reinvesting either maturities or selling securities in the portfolio, we're able to reinvest those at higher yields. And the yield at cost represents the average earnings you're achieving on the portfolio. If we were to allow everything to mature to its full maturity date, on average, you would realize about a 2.43% on those securities. If we were to buy all the exact same securities on March 31st, we would have achieved a 4.2%. So we're still working toward that parity. We would love to be closer or above the 4.2%, but we are working well toward getting to that goal. In terms of sector allocation, we continue to reduce agency holdings, as I mentioned, 61, 62% at the beginning of the quarter, reallocating into treasuries. CMBS is a great opportunity for the portfolio. We've gotten into some new issues there. And then we bought one Adobe bond during the period, as I mentioned. I also, in terms of managing the portfolio, we're looking at safety, liquidity, and yield being the three primary objectives of the portfolio, and in that order. So credit quality is a big part of that, as well as diversification. Everything we have in the portfolio is a single A or better. Bottom right chart, the duration distribution, just looking at the dark blue line, that's where we sit with duration in the portfolio for the various periods of time. We are heavily weighted in the 0 to 1 year, and we're looking forward to reinvesting those agencies either by maturity or active selling. We just want to be careful as to the amount of losses we're going to take if we were to sell. We're doing that very carefully and strategically with NID's approvals. I have touched on this through the comments already. We've leaned into treasuries. We still believe spreads on corporates and agencies tend to be limited. So we're buying strategically where it's appropriate. And as I mentioned, one corporate during the period, but largely leaning into treasuries if we're not going to get compensated for other credit risk assets. And we do continue to make progress on selling agencies where the value is the same as treasury and where we believe and the market is more liquid and tradable on the U.S. Treasury side. Not to take away from agencies, they still have liquidity and are tradable, but we don't see necessarily value by getting into agencies if we're getting similar or same yield in U.S. Treasury. Just turning to the portfolio's overall performance, the first quarter achieved $622,000 in interest earned for the period, and change in market value, which includes both realized and unrealized gains and losses. That was an increase of $1.28 million for a total dollar return of $1.9 million for the 3 months ended March 31. That compares to the full year of $5.7 million total return. Just looking at the portfolio versus our 1 to 5 year benchmark, the portfolio for the period returned to 1.73%. Annualized, that's a 6.92% return in a high grade fixed income portfolio. So again, high grade, really strong performances for the year. If we were able to get that duration, once we get that duration up to that 2.45 year duration that our benchmark is at, that's where the benchmark outperformed, getting to the 2%. We did lag behind that because we are short of duration, and during the period, longer securities did outperform. We also noted the flight to safety and to treasuries. So treasuries being a strong performer for the period, where we have a lot of agencies in the portfolio still trying to diversify through that. But given those two reasons, we did lag at the benchmark. Net of fee return 1.71%. But for the full year at a 5.6%, that did outperform after fees by 8 basis points with a total net of fee return of 5.52%. And another view of that, when you strip out the unrealized gains and losses, so just looking strictly at activity and earnings on an accrual basis, when you look at the chart on the top, the steeper we can get that blue line, the better. That means the yield in the portfolio will continue to rise and achieve higher earnings in the portfolio. In Q1, the annualized earnings was $2,488,000 versus if that was the annualized earnings. I should start by saying the quarterly earnings was $614,000, but annualized, that's 2.48 million. And when you kind of compare that to the past year of 2.08 million, we see that earnings rising more recently. So again, as we're reinvesting older securities that were purchased with lower yields in the current market, we'll continue to see that yield rise, which is, of course, the goal. We do that deliberately. We see some realized losses here where we might sell some short-term agencies to get reinvested and out earn the lower yield securities, but we don't want to do that, kind of flippantly and just get rid of lower yielding securities and take large losses. So we are doing that quite strategically over time with the discretion of NID and its approval through that trading activity. Our far right column, the last thing I'll note is the since inception date total earnings have been 3.4 million in the portfolio. Again, as we shift into higher yield environment with the securities, we'll continue to see that rise at a faster pace. And the inception date of the portfolio, as we note in the footnote, was September 30th of 22. So, we appreciate the opportunity to continue working with the district, and we would be happy to coordinate with the district that discussion with our strategy group as well. And that'll conclude my prepared remarks.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Brad, no?
None.
Rich?
I
You
had
asked your
mine.
questions. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think we are concluded.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thank you as well. Appreciate it.
Oh, we do. Oh, okay. I did. Oh, we did. Did they?
We don't anymore.
Oh, well, see, that's off my screen now. Gotta get that back. There we go.
Appreciate it, Michael. Thanks for
Thank
your
you
help.
so much.
Thank you for your time.
Before you go, Michael, let's ask for public comment.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ricky, you want to ask for public comment?
Yeah, if there's anyone in the public that would like to comment or question, this has been a workshop. The information presented, please raise your hand, indicate that you'd like to be heard. Okay. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and move forward with our agenda.
Great.
Oh, now we have one. Okay. Please go ahead.
Adrian.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to talk about the Golden Mussel and the closure of the upper elevation lakes.
Adrian, that is not part of what we're discussing here. We're just looking at our financial performance.
Yeah.
Yes, and so I don't believe that's on the agenda, is it today?
No, it's not.
Yeah, and the time
Okay.
for that would have been in the beginning at the public comment. It's not on the agenda. If you have a question, I suggest maybe you email it to Greg Jones and perhaps he can get back to you. But this is not the time for public comment about that item.
Will there be another meeting where we can discuss this?
We have public meetings.
Yes.
Adrian, we have meetings every 2 weeks. So probably the next board meeting would be the appropriate time to bring forth
June
your
11th.
public comment.
June
But
11th.
You can also, June 11th is when that next meeting is. You can also send an email to us at NID if you have any specific questions. I'm sure.
Yeah.
all of our-
I've sent emails of many concerned people that use the lake for recreation. So June 11th.
Yes.
That's the next board meeting. Yes. Let's go ahead and close this.
Thank you, sir. We're now closing public comment. Moving forward with the agenda. Please, we're looking at the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda any director would like to either pull, question, discuss?
I move to accept the consent agenda.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Division 1.
Yes,
I did you first. Sorry about that.
it's okay.
Division 2.
Aye.
Division 3.
Aye.
Division 4.
Yes.
Division 5.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move now to general orders. Item 5A, the Mulch Magic Giveaway. No, I said that without stumbling over my words. That was good. Okay, hi,
Good morning, board.
good morning.
Aurora Penaluna, Customer Service Administrator.
You bring the mic closer,
Yeah.
please, Aurora.
Absolutely. Is that
There
better?
you go, much
Right.
better, thank you.
Casey Strong, the district's water efficiency technician, is joining us virtually today because she is at a water efficiency conference this week. But she can answer any questions that I can't answer. So we are here today to ask the board to approve the transition from a Mulch Magic giveaway, a one-day event that we've done at the fairgrounds for the last several years, to a Mulch Magic rebate. There are several reasons for this transition, as indicated in the staff report. The first is lack of quantity control. The giveaway was always intended for any participant to take not more than 1 cubic yard of mulch. Very hard to actually police in a open setting. And people would come in with large dump trailers. We had one gentleman last year there for probably a couple hours, stomping down his mulch, getting as much as he could, far more than a yard. Also, location accessibility. We've heard concerns over the years when we've done water efficiency presentations that we're not reaching our customers in Placer County area. Doing this event at the Nevada County Fairgrounds obviously limits the number of people that are going to come from Placer County to pick up mulch. Transitioning to a rebate, they could go to any local vendor and turn in their receipt and get a $50 rebate for their mulch that they could use in their yards. Staffing costs, we do normally hold this one-day event at the fairgrounds, and so someone has to come in and work overtime. That's usually Casey, and then I'm there to support her. So we would save on those costs. And then we've heard from different customers, different people, participants, that they'd like to see different types of mulch. They have specific needs for their yards. We only have one type out there. So again, they could go to their local vendor and get whatever they need for their yard. Basic overview, we would ask customers to contact us and get a voucher before they go buy their mulch. Once they buy their mulch, they would just turn in their voucher and their receipt, and we would issue a credit to their customer account. It's quick, it's simple, and again, they can shop wherever they want. Questions?
Yeah, when this program was put in, mulch was kind of obscure. Farmers knew about it. We were trying to get the word out. Since PG&E has come through here, there's mulch everywhere. Everywhere. I'm wondering about the validity of the program versus, are we getting bang for our buck? We're not putting out that much. We're serving a very small clientele. I'm more inclined to just say it's a program that has served its purpose.
Mhm.
And no longer really has that much return.
So those are valid points. We do feel like it's an important part of our water efficiency program that helps us meet some of our requirements for the state. And mulch does have an important part in landscape for conserving water. And this year we've already had a number of inquiries about when are we doing our giveaway. So people know that we do it. They look forward to it.
So would it be fair then to say you give them a rebate and they go buy it somewhere, anywhere?
Correct.
I don't think it's something that we would want to give up on. I think, yeah, there's a lot of mulch around, but as the water agency who runs drought regulatory components, I don't think we want to be the agency that's going to give up on offering mulch to the community, because not everybody understands what it is. And a rebate, it's the budgeted dollar amount is so, generally low for the amount of, I think, publicity and press and benefit that we give to the community. It's just one added layer of benefit we can give to the community. I don't think it's something that we want to give away so easily or drop so easily. It's a good program. Yeah.
One more thing I'd like to add is that as part of our urban and ag water management plans, we have BMPs, best management practices, and they're required by the state. This is one of those. And so abolishing it would actually detract from what we said we're going to do in our urban and ag water management plan. So it's an important piece. Is the bang for the buck there? Maybe, maybe not, but it's definitely a regulatory compliance issue for us too.
Thank you, Chip.
Chip Webby, that was one of my questions. What state requirements does this program take care of? Is it that one or is there other ones also? Is it something with FERC licenses or any of that?
I think though that's the most important one is the urban water management plan. But there are also credits we get for doing these conservation programs. So regulatory wise, it's the urban water management plan. Credit for helping the community. That's another side of it that I think we get good PR for. So it's a double win in my book.
I mean, if you want to, Chris,
Yes, please. So thank you for clarifying that, Chip. I was in total agreement with coming into this. What's the bang for the buck for this program? How do we better serve the community? So, but that clarifies it. That helps a lot with the decision making. Great.
so I'm going to make an option. Yeah, mulch is all right, but if you really want to conserve water, let's go to like a Sunbelt mulch, which we've used it for 20 years. We get about 38% faster growth in our product, and we conserve water. We only have to irrigate it. I don't know the exact number, but 70, 80% of what our other orchards that don't have the Sunbelt could be laid anywhere. It's easier to handle, cheaper probably in the long run. It's not an every year thing you have to do, but the water conservation is real. It is very real. And even 30 years ago, they said, hey, we could cover the aqueduct, and you can't believe how much water we would save if we covered from evaporation. So I think mulch is, everybody wants to get in mulch, but if they really want to be effective, let's go to another product that's really evolved.
Rich, are you saying that that's something that could be included as a mulch in the rebate program? I'm assuming this is some kind of a fabric you're talking about that you put down. Would that be included in the mulch program? Is that what you're trying to?
Well, I'm asking, could it be?
Oh, okay.
So I'm not familiar with what Sunbelt mulch is, but I don't know that we would want to restrict what people could use. We might get less participation. A lot of people are using mulch not only for the conservation, but for beautification of their landscape. So we may find that people don't choose to participate.
We may want to go a year on this and see if there is a better prescriptive offer that we want to offer, but I think we'd be limiting, like Aurora says, our ability to communicate and be in tandem with the community if we're prescribing one particular option.
Right, you know
Rather
what?
let the community choose what they want.
Oh,
Exactly.
I thought Rich was proposing it as an option. That was all.
Yeah.
As an,
Not switching.
To be
from-
included.
yeah, not an alternative, but just a.
wholesale.
We see a lot of people put down this weed block and then put whatever color mulch what they want on top. I mean, it doesn't have, for beautification, but we're trying to save water.
So you're proposing including a weed, it's essentially a weed block in the rebate?
Yeah. I mean, basically, because that is more effective, but it's up to you guys. I mean,
To make it eligible for part of the rebate.
and I'm willing to say, hey, I'll make a motion to accept the proposal for one more year as we look into the other options.
Yeah, I think we just leave it as we do right now,
Mhm.
and then we'll look into it and come back another year later.
I have a question on the,
Okay, you go ahead, Earl, and then we'll go to Chris.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
What I heard was that we're concerned about people coming in with a big trailer taking multiple things. If I had 5 neighbors and they all gave me their certs and I went in there, are you gonna allow that to happen? Or can you get 1 cert per load, or how would that transpire?
So it would be as much mulch as you can purchase for $50. That would be the rebate amount. And we are asking that as part of the final submission, you send in a picture of your mulch in your yard. So ideally, we would have 5 different
Yeah,
pictures.
They're
of
not
5
selling it on the
different
street, right?
because we can then also use that in our water efficiency
Mhm.
portfolio.
Right, Chris?
So 2 questions. One goes back to Chip, mentioned the benefit we get for
Water conservation?
water, no, for the
Oh.
for the
State.
The state.
Water
okay,
management
yeah.
plan, yeah.
Where do we fall in? How many benefits are we getting? You know, when we have these kind of discussions, always over the map where how much is enough or how much is too much? Are we getting, so we fill in a box on the form, right? Say, yes, we're doing this. Is it sufficient? We get more points if we did more, less points if we did less? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are like 9 or 10 different BMPs that the state recommends you participate in for conservation. We don't check all the boxes because as a district, we don't have a lot of recycled water available, so we can't check those boxes. So I think because we have less than the maximum available, the ones we do have become more important.
Okay.
And this is one of those that's a good checkbox and showing we're making an effort.
Well, I guess the follow-on question is in the spectrum of have no clue, you know, we give some away. How much, is that enough? Is it getting us our points?
Yeah, good question.
Check in that box.
I think what we generally tell the state is, yes, we have this program and we dedicate this amount of funds to it every year. And so far that's been good enough. So.
Question I forgot.
I have
Yes, please, Brad.
Is the budgetary impact, the $10,000, is that inclusive of staff time or is that strictly mulch?
Strictly mulch.
Okay, thank you. So it wouldn't change, likely, it just change the staff time, how it's allocated. Okay,
Oh, go ahead.
thank you.
So, and
Chris has
my
another
other question was, where did the $50 amount come from? Was it 50 you said?
Yeah, it's
Vouchers are
$50.
gonna be for 50.
So we estimate that someone going to a bulk facility could get about a cubic yard for that amount. Obviously, customers can also go to a smaller
Okay.
hardware store type
Mhm.
and get
Okay.
different.
Good.
I have a comment, but I like the change because I like that it allows our customers from Placer County, which represent a fair number of people, that they have more options. I also like that by using these certificates, we can spread the money around to some of the locals, right? You know, not everybody needs to go to a Home Depot. We can go to mom and pop and support that. So I appreciate the change. I think it's a good thing and I would support the change.
Thank you.
It's an ideal Christmas gift to the gardener.
Are there other questions or comments? No? Is this, are we looking for a motion, Greg, on this?
I moved.
Well, wait. a minute.
We are. Yeah.
As
It's
approved.
agendized as an action item. Yep. Approve.
Okay. So I don't think we have an actual motion. Want to try it again?
Sure. All right, so I moved that we continue the mulch program as is for one more year.
And
Oh, wait, not.
the transition
With the rebate.
from mulch giveaway to mulch rebate.
Yeah, the
Oh, okay. That was.
the program.
that was-
What it
Mulch
says.
Magic
It says here on
giveaway.
the-
But it says here on the staff report.
No, we'll study that.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll. Thank you.
Public comment?
Oh, thank you. Oh, wait a minute. I forget this part. Is there public comment from anyone either online or in the room that would like to talk about the mulch magic and the change that we are being set to approve, it appears? You seeing none, then please call for the roll.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 4,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 2,
Aye.
Division 1.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, board, coming up next is going to be just a presentation by our very own Nasa King. We'll give you an update. We've been talking about the English Meadow restoration project for a number of years, almost as long as, why don't you come on down here?
Does anyone need a break before we go into this?
Ask Madam Chair.
Yes,
Recess.
yes. Let's take a 5-minute break, please.
We're gonna wait.
Back in session. Thank you, everyone. Go ahead, please. Nice to see you, Nasa. It's been a long time.
Been a very long time.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be here today.
That mic better than that one.
Okay, so you'd rather me? I'll come down.
Yeah, and I'll bet everybody else out there hear it
Thank
better
you,
too.
Just directionally, just turn right into it.
So is this good?
Yeah.
Mhm.
This is good. And you want my camera on, Chris?
Oh, mine. Yep. Just check it once. Oh,
There it is.
Okay. Good morning, directors. It's wonderful
Good
to see
morning.
all of you and to see some of you for a first time. My name is Nasa King. I'm the Environmental Resources Administrator here at NID. I work with Greg very often, sometimes many times a day, and with all of our staff. And I'm a team of two. There's one of other environmental resources person, Cameron Townsend. He's the technician with um, our program of two here, and he's actually out surveying an active bald eagle nest at Rollins Reservoir today.
Wow.
So we're taking a look to see what's going on out there. So he can't be with us. Between us, he's a wildlife biologist.
Do we have a camera on that, like they do at,
we don't.
We don't.
No, sir, we don't.
because that thing gets so much,
They're great.
Aren't they?
They're
They're fun.
Bear
wonderful.
Lake, right?
And it's what's tricky though is this pair of bald eagles, they have a number of nests. It's hard to know which one they're going to choose and occupy and use. And so it's a whole thing. It's also at the top of a very tall tree.
Mhm.
We use binoculars most often.
We have money for a camera?
No, we don't. Not for that.
No.
And so Cameron is a wildlife biologist. I'm a watershed scientist. Together, we come together, we work with all of the district staff and bring in expert consultants and contractors when needed as well. I think this is a very exciting kind of continuation of this conversation around assets.
Mhm.
I think we have irreplaceable, invaluable, wonderful watersheds that are such key assets to everything that we do here. They support our communities, are the source of our water supply, and that's really what is the focus and the driver for the things that we do here collectively. I have been working with the district here for about 10 years, and we've developed a watershed program that really looks at these services that watersheds provide and how do we best support, enhance, and protect them. I think we're all very clear that the largest risk to our watersheds would be large-scale catastrophic wildfire. That said, we do a whole lot of forestry work. We have about 10,000 forested acres. We're working from the top, the mountain peaks, down to the low elevations down near North Auburn. And these watersheds, if they're functional, if they're in a healthy condition, they're able to give us all sorts of economic services. They provide oxygen, clean water, food and fiber, productive soils, all the things, all the way down through supporting our communities and the people that are living here now. Watersheds also connect us importantly through time. So what has happened historically flows through the watersheds currently, and what happens upstream flows downstream. Those are pretty key concepts in what we're doing. So the source of our water begins at approximately 70,000 acres of high elevation watershed. Today, I'm going to focus on this headwaters area and a meadow restoration project that we are working on, and we're in about our 9th year of work up in English Meadow. So I think we're all pretty familiar with our commitment and our mission statement around water and water resources, and that in order to guarantee the long-term water supply, we have to continue to be really good stewards in these watersheds, conserving the available resources in our care. And so you ask, what does that look like? It looks like many things. As you can see in this slide, sometimes it means we're thinning the forest. We're actively out harvesting trees. We do a lot of understory and ladder fuel treatment as well. Sometimes you see that bottom right corner, that's Ashley, that's one of our hydrographers. She's standing on a staff gauge and our stream gauge in the Middle Yuba River, just below English Meadow. We're out doing cross sections and flow measurements. And then that center picture is Cameron Townsend, the environmental resources tech, where we hand collected native seed in English Meadow for 4 years prior to the construction of the project. So we can use on-site seed to revegetate and reseed disturbed soils. This slide, I apologize for, there's far too many words on it. But what it's all focusing on is that we are working actively to restore forest resilience and to protect our headwaters region. I think we've all heard and are very aware of the condition of our forests. The overly dense, overly stocked forests, the amount of dead and down debris, the density of these acres of forested watershed lands, and that if our goals are to secure a dependable water supply, to create healthy and resilient forest communities, to reduce wildfire risk, and to protect our infrastructure, we need to get after it with really clear strategies. So forest management is one of our very focused strategies, habitat restoration and protection, because we love living here and so do many other things. And it all comes together. It's part of an ecosystem-based approach. Meadow restoration is a key component of our headwaters management because meadows are a small, unique habitat feature with incredible hydrologic benefits and a natural propensity to slow and really reduce wildfire impact. So by supporting and restoring meadows, they provide this long-term self-sustaining benefit to our watersheds. And then watershed education, because we want to develop an informed community and population that moves forward with us as we face the future of our watershed health.
Yes. Yeah, Nisha, underwater education, the golden mussel is a new entry. And I don't know if you, not at length today, but maybe at the end of presentation for education purposes, how damaging that thing, if the golden mussel gets into Jackson Meadows or Bowman or upper reservoirs, what that could do to this district. Because no one, you know it so well.
Time to get into that.
You know what?
No, I said,
Not
but
really on this.
hey, watershed education, because we're being questioned as to our decision to shut down those two boaters. But we're not getting the word out, or they're not listening.
I'll
That,
give you a quick update on that.
Yeah, during the director report. I
Okay.
think we can get.
but I think
an update.
you know how devastating that's going to be to us if they do get, into our watershed. And so I just want to hear, not that, I didn't say today, but I
Okay,
just want to hear it more now in presentations because it's newer. We're
Yep.
dealing with it and we're being questioned as to our decisions, but our decisions, willy-nilly.
okay, Director
There's a
Johann.
real threat there and we need to get that out.
I think that's one of those invasive species she's talking about.
Yeah, invasive species.
Yeah.
We will come back to that.
Chris
Yes.
has a question, please.
Is this picture on the former slide, the lower right-hand one, is that a before or after picture? Is that between English Meadow and Jackson Meadows?
So so you have two pictures in this image. One of them, so the lower one is the Middle Yuba River flowing through English Meadow before we did the work.
Before we did the work. Okay.
And you're facing downriver, so the flow comes from behind you and heads down. Jackson Meadows would be down through a bedrock canyon behind those trees in front of you. The left side that is very green has two fen or peat bog communities that are spring fed, which is why this area is green. It's got a constant year-round source of water and flow through it. The top one, we've done mastication in English Meadow. We did both meadow restoration on 200 acres and 175 acres around the perimeter of mastication and hand thinning to really space those trees out, make sure the canopies weren't touching. So that's a mastication photo from English and the other is the river.
And Nisa, could you tell us how this got paid for? Was this a grant? Maybe it's in your presentation later.
It is. It's a great big slide. I
Okay,
will.
great. We'll wait
We'll
then.
get to
Thank you
that.
very much.
And, okay, so this map, again, is very small and hard to see, but the quick overview explanation of this is this map shows where we get our water from and where we deliver it to. The different fingers from the top of the slide, the north side down, would be the North, Middle, and South Yuba River. You see the Deer Creek watershed is pink, and right in the center of the slide, that has Scotts Flat Reservoir around it. Below it is the Bear with Rollins Reservoir. We call those two the kind of mid-elevation area that we work in. Then on the left, you see the black outline zone. That's our water distribution area. That's the jurisdictional line. You notice the blue squares? That is the very small amount of land that we own through this vast watershed that our water originates from. So it gives you a sense of the landscape we're working on in a very tame, remote way, because we go from the mountain tops of over 6,000 and 7,000 feet in elevation down toward Lincoln, around 100 feet or less. There's a lot of terrain you cover.
Indeed.
I have a question about
Yeah.
that.
About-
The 70,000 number we've used for a long time, that includes Forest Service land.
Correct?
Mhm.
Yep. So water, yeah,
We only own about 10,000 or whatever.
total acres.
Total acres.
Yeah. And so watersheds, the thing about watersheds, they don't care about land ownership. Watersheds are the landscape that we all live in, that we're looking at, divided by ridge lines and mountain peaks. And the concept is, think of a bowl. Any water that falls on that landscape flows down to a common water body, a lake or a river. We have water system infrastructure that may move it from one basin to another. But everything that happens in that bowl, in that watershed, influences the downstream components. And so if it's Forest Service owned, SPI owned, private owned, it's all in there together. So we have watershed management projects that we put on the ground. We're just touching on a few of them. The recent past projects focusing in on Scotts Flat and Rollins reservoirs. We've done a lot of forestry around both of those reservoirs. And Director Heck, I'm not addressing yet the funding piece, but I will just in broad terms say that what we've done for 10 years is really try to leverage the district's investment in our watershed stewardship activities with grant funding. We often, just in rough terms, we're at kind of a one district dollar to two grant funded dollars, kind of a leverage on this. So we go for a lot of state grants specifically. We've partnered very actively with the Sierra Nevada Conservancy and the Wildlife Conservation Board over the last 10 years. So that's umbrella.
A broad umbrella. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Since we own so much land or so little land in there, and SPI owns a lot, the railroad owns a lot, the Forest Service has a lot, do we have a working relationship with them to make sure we cover all this and take care of this properly?
I love these questions. Yes, sir, we do.
Question.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to accomplish collectively, because there's just a synergistic benefit, is if you can do landscape scale treatment, you have a much broader, longer term benefit to your watersheds. There's also that reality of, if we're trying to noodle in and get to 500 acres over here, most of these areas are remote. They're difficult to access and they're far. So for instance, if you want to do forest harvest and thin your forest, our objective may be different. We approach it very differently than someone that's trying to log an area, for instance, to make money. We're in there, we're marking every single tree that leaves. We're identifying the healthiest trees and keeping those. We want this multi-species, multi-age stand. Like, we make it really hard on the loggers, but the outcome for us is healthy, functional watersheds. But if we can work to move timber when somebody else has already gone in to do additional forest work, or to piggyback our work with the National Forest Timber Harvest Project, you get the economies of scale and benefits if somebody's already had to improve that road. So yes, there's partnership in that way. And then we also have an active grant right now, a planning grant with our friends at the Tahoe National Forest to go and look at 3,500 acres of national forest land all around the Middle Yuba River headwaters, around Jackson Meadows specifically. We'll help them get it through the NEPA process, the National Environmental Policy process, so that it would be ready to then be harvested in the future. Because we need those acres that directly benefit our source watersheds to rise on their list of priorities. So we're going to help them get the environmental compliance and planning completed, because those are critical acres for our objective of long-term water supply. because they have thousands and thousands of acres they're trying to get after. We need those to rise. Hundreds, hundreds of thousands, in fact.
Right.
So yes, there's partnerships. We work actively with SPI as well, because they sometimes need our roads, our access. They're next to our infrastructure, and it goes both ways.
Follow up on that, bark beetle and prescribed burns. The bark beetle is terrible out there, has been for a long, long time. Are we actively trying to eradicate that? And if so, what measures are we using? And are we using prescribed burns to try and get rid of some of those ladder fuels, et cetera?
Yes, we have a bark beetle and a number of other beetles. So there's a lot of, we have stressed forests. They're overly dense. We've got warming climate conditions. We're on the, a long-term drought has affected the health of our forests. So by thinning forests, you improve the resilience, the strength of the keep trees and the forest community as a whole. There's less straws taking water out of the system, less trees competing for sun and for nutrients and all of it. So you want your forests to be stronger, then they can resist beetles. There've been bark beetles here forever, as well as all the other beetles. And if a tree is strong, it can often push them out and fight them off. When we see pockets of beetle kill, we go in and we'll cut the trees down. There's different methods. You can haul it all off. You can cut it into short lengths if it's remote, so it dries out and the beetles can't reproduce. So yes, we're actively working. We have a consulting registered professional forester that we're often consulting with on this, to help guide and make sure our forestry is as current as it can be. Cameron and I have also gone to pest management, forestry conferences and we're always researching what's the best approach to tackle the issues at hand this year or in current years. Regarding prescribed fire, we've done pile burning. We have not done prescribed fire, but we're really hoping that becomes a maintenance strategy because you have to reduce the fuel load in order to have a controllable fire. So we're in the mechanical thinning part of prescribed fire, but we're really looking forward to using that as a tool.
Sorry for all the questions, but I got one more. There's a fancy term for it. I don't know if I'll enunciate it correctly, carbon sequestering or whatever it is.
Sequestration.
Yeah. Are we using that in places that we can't get logs out or things like that, just to put the carbon back in the soil? Okay.
So carbon sequestration comes in many forms. By thinning the forest, you're allowing the keep trees to grow often. Their growth rate will increase if there's less competition. So the trees in the forest sequester carbon. Meadows are also a hot spot for carbon sequestration. The native grasses, the wet meadow community puts deep roots down. There's a number of studies that have been done recently, and we're part of the Sierra Meadows Partnership. So we're all sharing information about the benefits of meadow restoration with respect to carbon sequestration. We have decked logs at times. I don't know that that's the most effective way, but sometimes if you can't get into access those trees, those logs are laying on the forest floor. There's different ways of tackling it, but yes, we're aware of the strategies to improve carbon sequestration, and we're pushing toward those.
We aren't using carbon sequestration as a revenue project-based process. I think that's what you might be referring to. There are revenue opportunities and a market for carbon purchasing and carbon renewable credits. We don't have any of those on our projects at this point.
Neither do farmers, and yet they're the number one carbon sequestration
Yeah,
group.
yeah.
I mean,
There's a lot of paperwork that goes along with those.
to get that.
The credits.
Do you measure, anybody up there measuring parts per million of carbon?
We are not, no.
Anybody?
No, there are some of I believe Circle has done some work in some of I don't know if it's Van Norden Meadow, but they've got a few meadow projects that they're involved with. And you can come out and put those units on the ground that measure carbon and oxygen levels. So there are ways to measure it. I think they're often paired up with either UC Davis or Merced to get out and do that level of kind of instrumentation and data collection. Not to say we wouldn't.
Yeah.
To see over time, it'd be really interesting to see over time as our meadow kind of heals and recovers from the construction and implementation part, how does that change? Okay, back to the Meadow.
Yes.
And so currently underway on this list, as you'll see in green, is English Meadow Restoration Project. That is one of 4 significant projects we're involved with because we're also working, we have 400 acres we're working on also in the Middle Yuba Headwaters. That's called the Upper Yuba Headwaters Forest Restoration Project. I'll touch on that. We're working in the Bear River and the wildfire scar. And we have this planning grant that I was just referencing with the National Forest to take 3,500 acres through NEPA so that those areas then are ready to be worked on and have selective harvest done to improve our watershed condition. We've got a list here of upcoming ongoing activities from hazard tree work to continued work in English Meadow or watershed education. And then we're always looking at new grants and additional projects that we want to follow up on. So this project here, this is a picture of walking into the meadow on a slope that we've walked in on now for 10 years into the English Meadow project. The map shows you Grass Valley is in red, and when you look up top, you can see English Meadow there is the little square slightly to the south, but that is upstream of Jackson Meadows Reservoir. The Middle Yuba Headwaters there flows in a northward direction. Oh, again, a lot of words. I'm sorry about this slide too. So we had 2 primary hypotheses. And the first is, can we go into this meadow and using a process-based approach, which is that we will use on-site trees. We had dense lodgepole pine stands. Can we use these lodgepole pine trees? Can we use these vast gravel and cobble bars as the building blocks, the on-site material, to work in the river, to change the hydrology, to change the timing of the spring runoff? We knew from looking at this meadow that we would have these peak runoff events that were very short in duration, but your hydrograph would be a peak. And when you have that kind of a peaked hydrograph, you have great scour potential. And so the river, we would get a rain on snow event. This meadow is above 6,000 feet, roughly 6,500 feet. So it would have snow into the spring, and we'd get one of those warm storms in. And within 3 days, all the snow is gone and all the water washed out. And what we're trying to do, the primary goal here is to slow down the water, spread it out and absorb it, and hold it in this meadow bowl. So we have a series of sub items under this one hypothesis, which is, can we change the behavior of the river and slow it and spread it out, which is what we think is more closely aligned with what would be naturally found in that river? And can we also thin the lodgepole pine to reduce the wildfire potential, which would also have benefits to the water supply that flows through the system? So this is English Meadow back in the late 1800s. English Meadow was below Rudyard or English Dam. This was, at the time, the largest reservoir in the state of California, and it was constructed for hydraulic mining. It went through, here's one of the photos here, is a wooden, I believe they call it a crib dam. I'm not that good about dam structure, but this crib dam was constructed, and you can see in the top photo, that's the area inundated under the water. So as the river flowed into the meadow now, it changed from being, there's terms lentic and lotic. Lentic systems are flowing systems, lotic are lake systems. It had evolved with a river flowing through it, and all of a sudden you dam it. So as this river is transporting sediment, rather than being able to carry it through and down the Middle Yuba, it stopped and it settled the sediment out. When you reduce the velocity of water, its transport capacity drops out. So this sediment started to fill in the reservoir, or the meadow beneath this reservoir. Here's one picture, and one of our objectives for the project weren't just to slow and spread the water, so it would re-wet this meadow system, but to reduce the amount of sediment that's delivered into Jackson Meadows Reservoir, one of our key high elevation storage reservoirs. This river dumps straight into Jackson Meadows Reservoir, a 1/16 of a mile below the river, or below the meadow. So here you have 2 aerial images. where you're seeing the extension of a sediment delta into our reservoir, into Jackson Meadows Reservoir. And that's a comparison between 2012. It's roughly a 10-year timescale. This is one way to measure and account for the sediment that enters the system that then, as we all know, once sediment is in a reservoir, it's incredibly difficult to get out. So one objective is to attenuate and hold that sediment in the meadow. So by taking the peak out of this hydrograph, which essentially means reconnect the river to its floodplain so it spreads out instead of cuts down and channelizes out, so it can scour and carry sediment. You're keeping the sediment up in the meadow. You're spreading out the flow, and you're reducing this spring flush event down into this reservoir. This right here is a picture. Again, that's good. That's Ashley, again, our hydrographer, standing in a scour pool in that top left photo. You can see that's, what are we going to say? She's 6 foot tall-ish person. So that's 12 to 18 feet deep, this scour pool. Sometimes that bank behind her would push back 5 feet a year. Every year we'd go up, we put trail cameras on the tree right above her. The next year the tree was in the river, the trail camera's gone. There's so much erosion during a big flow event, and it scours through and gets carried and deposited into the reservoir. So significant bank erosion is one of the things that we've tried to work on and treat with these structures. This picture here in the bottom right isn't a debris jam that we constructed, but when we designed the project, we went out and looked at what is the river naturally doing. We want to use a process-based approach, which recognizes the river has great potential up here to move and carry things. Nothing's going to exactly stay necessarily, but if it creates log jams and behind it, we see that it's depositing the sediment and reconnecting to its floodplain to re-wet the meadow, we're going to follow that approach. So this area did receive a lot more. We installed a number of structures in that area to protect that cut bank. So
I have a question.
yes.
So listening to the presentation, it becomes apparent that apparently the crib dam that was there and the flooding contributed to the problem. So we're now mitigating not just a natural thing, but a man-made problem. Is that correct?
Correct. So what we see is that in the Sierra Nevada region, that mountain meadows are a very small part, only possibly 2%. And you can generally say that in the 1800s, when grazing was brought in, there was a lot of sheep grazing specifically in these areas. But grazing led to the initial impacts, hydraulic mining and damming, diversion of river systems. These all have had pretty significant impacts on the condition of these meadows. And again, meadows are unique features and watersheds that if you get them back to a healthy, more self-sustaining condition, they have this long-term benefit. So if you're going to figure out where do we start, that's a good place to start. And this meadow, by inundating it, it had 6 to 8 feet of fine sediment. It's like walking through dry cooking flour in some areas. Very little organic material. The trees show this drying out desiccation pattern. So we're losing the wet meadow environment that provides unique terrestrial and aquatic habitat. We're losing that connection between the river and the floodplain. So the water flushes through and then the system starts drying when a more intact functional meadow holds its spring runoff. You see these wetland communities that are extensive. Extensive means for all of us, mosquitoes that could literally carry us away pretty much. That's one measure of a good meadow. We have areas where there's no mosquitoes, which is an interesting reality. But we're having to deal with the fact that this whole valley bottom 200 plus acres has been altered by that inundation and a quick dewatering so that the river cut through. And then the dam was actually reconstructed. Anecdotally, it's hard to find, but there is, story has it that then the farmers came up and actually blew the dam up. And so 2 times it had sudden collapse and failure. So the river would cut through it. And now it's like the river can't find a stable configuration. And in a healthy river, it doesn't mean that it won't move. Rivers have braided channels. They move all around. One year they're here, the next year they're there. But this one just can't stabilize, and it keeps scouring out sediment and delivering it downstream.
One of the impacts of climate change, warmer, faster snow melt off, might be this also, where our rivers, our creeks are going to be more scoured.
Yep, absolutely. And also if we get less water falling as snow
Right.
and more falling as rain, so shifting to a wetter storm pattern, you see these. So this whole project, the premise is to make it just more kind of climate ready, climate resilient, knowing that we're heading in that direction.
This is going to give us tools to treat these other rivers and creeks.
We have 3 more meadows in our sites.
Well, but
Yes.
beyond meadows, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have, I mean, by working in rivers and keeping the large woody debris in the system, you're physically slowing that water down. By giving it access to its floodplain, those are the natural processes that we need the river to maintain and continue. We're really lucky here. There's no infrastructure that we need to worry about. The system can go back to a more kind of natural cycle. These are the goals of why you work in meadows. And then importantly, these green belts, they've been shown, especially in the Dixie Fire, where the wildfire came down into green meadows. It slowed down, it stopped. It had this natural wildfire buffering effect. And terrestrial animals knew to run there. So it becomes a refuge. Many things like meadows. These are pictures of some of the things we've seen there. We have a goshawk pair that have reared young in the meadow multiple years on the edge of the meadow there. That's a little sad yellow flower on the top is called a starved daisy. It's a rare plant. We've got it in the meadow. We've done multiple years of, that's a bog orchid, the tall, skinny, white, fuzzy looking thing. There's woolly fruited sedge. There's all sorts of interesting things when you slither around in the meadow on your belly long enough that you find. And we've worked with researchers. We created an interdisciplinary team back in 2016 where we started a 3-year process of doing floral and faunal surveys. We have a geologist, Dr. Kevin Cornwell from Sacramento State University, came up and did a whole geologic assessment. We've had some of his grad students on site. So we've got this interdisciplinary team. We've done multiple years of surveys looking again at floral, faunal conditions, river and valley-wide cross sections. We've done a full hydrologic assessment. We've looked on rare plant surveys. We've looked at the geology. This one photo that's hard to really see very clearly, that was one of our early designs for where would we put structures based on the profile of the river, the condition of the adjacent floodplain, and then you have that bottom one there, that's Leslie Mink. We engaged Plumas Corps. So Plumas Corps is out of Quincy, California. They've done meadows for over 2 decades. I think they're in 30 years of meadows. Jim Wilcox, Leslie Mink works there as well. Leslie worked with us from the beginning to develop the design for this project. Again, the idea being to use on-site materials to slow, spread, and absorb the water, and to reduce the fuels that would contribute to a catastrophic wildfire.
Lisa, I have a question, and maybe this will be answered later in the presentation, but yay, this is a fabulous project. I'm excited that we're participating in it. But I also want to know, how do you quantify when it's done and you move to the next area? That's one question. And then how do you, or is there a method of quantifying success? You know, is it flow? Is it, you know, I'm just curious
Okay.
if we can put some of those.
Maybe let's get through
You want to get,
more of your presentation and
okay.
close with some of those comments. We do have a hand raised online as well.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
uh,
Well, this is a workshop.
we we could probably take
Yeah.
James's question.
James, if you can
Now.
hear us, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question? James, I believe you are,
Up, your hands down.
your hand is down. Do you have something you'd like to ask, James? You are now muted.
He lowered his hand, so.
He lowered his
maybe-
hand. Okay, James, well, if you have a question later, raise your hand.
He's there. Now he's trying.
Oh, he's trying? Okay, it's not showing on my,
Anything?
you're unmuted, James. Oh, now your hand is raised and you're unmuted. So if you can, just go for it.
Speak.
Yeah, when are you guys gonna open the lakes back up?
We're not on that topic.
We're not on that topic,
Thank-
James, and we will have in the future at one of our meetings a more in-depth discussion about that. But
Okay, let's continue.
thank you very much. Let's continue.
Okay, one way to measure success in a Meadow project, because one of our objectives, again, I had those two hypotheses, was can we change the timing and flow of water
Right.
that exits this meadow?
Mhm.
We installed a stream gauge. So a stream gauge gives us year-round flow measurements. It was all installed by district staff working with our staff in the hydro department. And then we've got annual operation and maintenance of that system. So these photos here are staff out there just doing annual work to make sure it's calibrated, operating. We've got 4 years of pre-project data. This will be our first year of post-project data.
Oh, cool.
Because one way to measure if you're done is the money runs out.
Well, there's always that.
But we accomplished so much in this project. So this project began when we were working on a grant with the Sierra Nevada Conservancy to go up and assess the forest and write essentially like a timber harvest plan or something like that. Once we spent that first summer up there, that site is so much more. The potential there was so great. And the more we looked at it and started to look at what's happening hydrologically, what's happening in the forest, let's look at the flora and fauna, we all decided it's much more of an ecosystem-based project. And so that's where forestry and timber is a component, but working in that river, really, it just kept rising as that's the thing to do here to get benefits.
Mhm.
And that was that, again, that interdisciplinary team and the conversations we had here at the office and up on site. So we then obtained a larger grant from the Wildlife Conservation Board, and they've been very happy with the work we've been able to accomplish. Let me see if I can jump off of this one. Yeah, I think I can. I might have skipped. Okay, so sorry, there's a delay. So while we were, so let me back it up a little bit. We obtained a grant from the Wildlife Conservation Board to do the implementation portion. It was about $1.5 million. Prior to that, of course, we had to go through a multi-year environmental compliance process. So we were gathering all of those surveys, all of the baseline documentation to then start to develop a project concept. We went through that whole, the whole CEQA process, consultations, the public interfacing and community meetings piece of this. We also had to obtain a number of permits from our federal and state partners. We went through all of that. It took about 3 years. And then we were ready to get moving. So the English Meadow project, what's interesting, this slide, what I wanted to point to, this is not our project. This is Parazzo Meadow, which you drive by on the way in to English Meadow. It's the top of the little Truckee there. That's on the way into Jackson Meadows. So meadow restoration, we didn't come up with this idea. It's been happening for 30 years in the Sierra. So thankfully, there's many projects to look at that have employed many different strategies. This is a pond and plug. You can see there, the river's flowing from the right-hand side of the image to the left. You can see that vegetated center strip where they used sediment and material to basically create plugs in the river to create a pooling system. That's one way. We used large woody debris. We created riffles and debris jams using trees and rocks and cobble. That's a different strategy. You hear popularly beaver dam analogs. It's a very popular buzz term right now, where people go in and on smaller systems create hand-built structures to imitate the activity of a beaver. And so our project, I also wanted to put in here a bit of a comparison. It's hard to know, like, where does our project land when you look at other projects? Our project is on the larger scale. We did 200 acres of meadow and 175 acres of forest thinning on the edges around, so a 375 acre project. Van Norden Meadow, which is on the way up near Soda Springs, that's a circle project, is roughly 485 acres. And Ackerson Meadow down near Yosemite in the Sierras is 230 acres. They're similar in terms of understanding the size comparison, and the amount of money invested in meadows varies greatly. So to speak again, Director Heckwith, back to like, when do you know you're done? It depends on how big of a party are you throwing? How big of a ship can you afford to build? And we were able to take the $2.2 million, and that's an accounting of the money that Nevada Irrigation District, then the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, and the Wildlife Conservation Board. That's a full accounting of all the funding that's gone into this, including staff time. We were able to put in over 60 structures on the river. We were able to treat 200 acres of meadow. We were able to do an additional 175 acres on the slopes immediately surrounding it. It was hard. It was amazing. It was great. Success is that, and I still knock wood, first item that everybody talks about up there, it's remote. It's hard to get to. It's serious work. Nobody got hurt. Success for sure. We've been able to accomplish everything we thought we wanted to try to do that was in our CEQA document. And then even more, we had written the CEQA document. We always called it the whole enchilada. That's the whole enchilada. And then we might have to implement it in phases. It gives you a 5-year window. We were able to do it. And we were able to really look at how does the water move through the system? If our main objective is slow it, spread it, absorb it, working with on-site materials, well, we know we got trees and we know we've got sediment and cobble. We kept working. We've had the California Department of Fish and Wildlife out for a site tour. Everyone it's been a really exciting project through the years.
I just want to commend you early for this whole project because, I mean, and I understand a lot of the differences. You used material that was laying around and that these other projects are bringing it in. And my question actually says, when you import material into somewhat of an isolated meadow, aren't you dealing with some unmitigatable unknowns, impacts, diseases, bugs, whatever?
It's all potential, yeah.
And why did they allow it?
I don't know that they had alternatives. I don't know enough about any of those projects. But sometimes you need, if your river is down cut so deeply, and if you don't have on-site materials, you don't have areas that you can borrow from.
You need to bring it.
You don't have thousands of lodgepole pine. We have lodgepole pine encroachment because the meadow was in a drying or a desiccating trend. Lodgepole pine can't grow very well when the roots are wet. It doesn't like its feet wet all the time. But as this meadow dried, the lodgepole pine encroached more, and then they used more water. So that it was this positive feedback loop. Well, we took those trees and we used them to put them in channels, to build structures. There were a series of dewatering ditches. This meadow happens to be 2 counties, Nevada County side on one side of the Middle Yuba and Sierra on the other. The Sierra County side had dewatering ditches carved into it. It had bermed sides. It was these dense thickets of lodgepole pine. They were rolled in. The soil was pushed in. All the disturbed soils have been reseeded because we collected seed for 4 years prior. So we had bags of seed here, up at Plumas Corps that was just labeled bags of seed.
A lot of good planning.
Yeah, it was. And we put we ground and ground, and we have chips on everything to also reduce the erosion potential.
You mean mulch?
We're gonna get back to the presentation and get going. Pointed at that.
Okay, so this is what it looked like in terms of what we were doing. We were cutting down trees, we were grinding them up. We had to get heavy equipment into the site. Our partners at the National Forest, the Tahoe National Forest, were very helpful with helping us to gain access on existing roads. Our project contractors, we worked, our primary contracting operator was Frank Dial Logging. He brought in an incredible team of people that can work in remote areas, and they knew how to work with and move and harvest and grind and spread trees like nobody's business. So that's part of our success. So we had a great, strong team. Black Dog Enterprises came in with mastication and did really good mastication work on the slopes to open up our slopes. That increases the snowpack on the ground with overstory canopy shading. There's a lot of benefit there. We also spent a week working with Symbiotic Restoration Group out of Arcata, Eureka area. They came in and we built these beaver dam analogs on 2 small tributaries. So we did hand crew work, cutting and bringing in small pines and sod. The grant funding, again, is primarily the Wildlife Conservation Board, who've been incredible partners in this, and also the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. We used heavy equipment. We cut down trees. Here you can see one of the pieces of equipment taking whole lodgepole pine trees that they'd bring over. And this top photo is a structure that's in the middle of the river where we would have transplanted that spriggy looking willow that's the middle of the photo. We would scoop out the willows, set them aside, put them in a spot, trench the river, stick anywhere from 5 to 15 whole trees with root wads into this structure, mound it up, plant your willow back in where you knew its roots were touching the water, mound it up, and keep moving. So we would do, on a good day, 3 structures a day, and on a hard day, we'd be working on 1 structure for half a week. It really depended site by site. Like I said again, Frank Dial Logging is a logging and a contractor. He brought in a crew of people that could cut down these lodgepole pine. You can see they suggest that they're good building blocks because here Brian's trying to get into the base of it to cut it. You can see how gnarled and rough they are, so they lock in very well. And that's the structure that was built with that tree that he's now standing on down in the river. Some of these structures were in sections of river that had already gone. The valley is essentially 2 parts. The top part of the flow is intermittent. It's a very low gradient meadow, about a 1% grade. The top part is intermittent by July every year. The water has dropped subsurface. The bottom part flows. After we put in structures in that intermittent section, you'd go the next morning and there was water. It's subsurface hydrology. It's a shallow aquifer. It responded like that. We're also taking the straws out by reducing the amount of lodgepole pine that are utilizing water. So here's a series of woody debris structures. The top 2 photos are in the Middle Yuba River. So those are large structures. Usually they have between 8 and 15 trees in them. We use a lot of woody debris, knowing the river may carry, like that top right photo, may pick up some of those trees and take them downriver. That's fine. It'll place them, it'll plug them into areas where the flow can carry it to. The left side is a winter runoff channel that we just put trees in to slow and spread that water. You would cut pines or rip them out, the lodgepole pine again with the root wad intact, you'd face them upstream. So all those needles are going to capture sediment and slow the flow. And then the right-hand side, that's a perennial little tributary that flows out of a fen. A fen is a unique kind of peat bog habitat that you find in these montane meadows associated with rare plants. This water was starting to downcut into the meadow. By creating these structures, again, we're slowing it and spreading it out, and we're stopping that head cut from traveling up to accelerate the amount of flow that collects and flows out of the system. Here's the money slide in terms of what we've put in from the beginning until now. This slide captures the Sierra Nevada Conservancy's initial $50,000 grant. That was a planning grant to go up there, and that's when we realized we had far more potential than just doing a timber harvest type project. To the English Meadow, this covers the restoration and planning and permitting that the district paid for, including our staff time. And then the Wildlife Conservation Board grant of $1.2 million that we matched with another $282,000. It's brought total project funding to approximately $2.2 million for 375 acres of fabulous benefit.
Well done.
It's
Really well done.
It's been a wonderful project. And it still is. We've got money in the budget this year. This year is the first year post-construction for that. We'll call it the first real phase of what we've done up there. We're going to go up, we're going to assess the site and come up with what needs to happen, because now we're in kind of a maintenance monitoring mode. Identify priorities, and then start looking if we need to go and seek additional grant funding. We have a number of funding partners that are interested in making sure this project has a long life and really gets the attention and maintenance it needs. And we're hoping that prescribed fire can become one of the tools, as we need to start looking at maintaining those slopes around the meadow that we've already done the mechanical treatment in. So next steps, excitedly, this June we'll be going up with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's beaver restoration team. Beavers do meadow work like nobody else can. And this is a great spot for them because there's nothing that we'd have to worry about in the meadow. There's no infrastructure, there's no culvert, there's no intake, there's nothing. Beavers can be problematic if you have them where you don't want them. Up here, they're perfect because they'd be on site. We'll go up, we'll do a suitability analysis to see, do we have sufficient water, food, and habitat? And possibly they would be looking to partner with us and bring up a family of beaver. This has happened once in California recently, and it's really something that we've talked about in watershed for decades now, the importance, yeah.
They live at the high elevation?
They can, yes. And they can, we know they're at Weber Lake nearby. They're in Perazo Meadow. I'm not sure if they're in Jackson. So we know they're nearby. We know that they've got multiple generations nearby. So this would probably be a family, or it'd be a pair with their kits, pups. I'm forgetting what baby beavers are. And we will also go up and we did a California Department of Fish and Wildlife stream condition inventory before the project, which is this very detailed 3-day, we go out, measure everything. We'll do a post-construction inventory this year as well. And then we're going to identify any monitoring and management needs. When you disturb soil, you always get weeds. And there are weeds that are coming down from the slopes above, often where there've been logging operations. So we're seeing St. John's wort, thistles. So we go out there and we've done just hand pulling mechanical treatment in this meadow because meadows are so sensitive. So we'll be monitoring all the invasive species. Our vegetation crew came out last summer and they were a lot of help. It was so nice to have 6 more people on site to help cutting lodgepole pine, and we use those as building materials, and also dealing with the invasive species there. We do year-round photo monitoring of the river and different portions of the meadow. We will continue that indefinitely right now. So we'll get up there soon to look on our trail cameras. Also downstairs, our crews from our engineering department, we've got aerial imagery. We took the drone out there. So we will refly it. So we have really good aerial imagery with elevations. Another really nice monitoring tool. That'll also help us to do a vegetation analysis to know how does the wet meadow change in time. And then we will go out and look for future grants and keep doing this, and also start looking at Austin Meadow, which is on a district parcel near Jackson Meadows Reservoir. And we have Middle and Shotgun Meadows as well. So a lot to look forward to.
Fabulous. I'm proud
Oh,
of our crews and our NID family for making this happen. I really am. It's
Good.
Mesa has created a great team
She sure have.
and has been working tirelessly up there.
Well,
One quick question. What's the contour interval you're using for the aerial topography?
I don't know. I can find out. I will circle back around for what the contour is. Yeah, our survey crews came out and we've actually been there twice now. Yeah.
Just an idea. Set up an adopt a beaver program to raise money. Offset things.
adopt a beaver. Right.
We could turn it into a,
Sponsor one?
No, that's what his idea.
Yeah.
when we have a beaver TV show. Oh, they already did that.
Leave it to.
There is
A beaver cam. up
there is also a great video that was just produced,
Yes.
finished, I believe, last week.
Oh,
It
really?
is on our YouTube channel. Our system here doesn't do a very good job playing a video, so we're not going to play it for you today. It's about a little over 4 minutes, but it's on NID
Info.
water.com and it is on
Info,
our
news,
it's on our news,
YouTube.
videos,
Oh,
YouTube,
that's great.
and you'll find it. It should be the first one that's there.
Nice.
We just uploaded it, I think, just earlier this week.
Leave it to beaver.
That-
Wally.
Thank you, Nasa.
Any
Thank you so much. Are
questions?
there
Any
questions?
from the board?
Public comment?
I'm just, first time asking for board. Thank you so much, Rich, for your direction. All right. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment or have a question?
There was one earlier.
Yes, we saw that, but on this topic, on the topic of English Meadow
Oh.
restoration.
All that.
Yes. I'm seeing none. Thank you, Nasa, so much.
My
It's
pleasure.
really terrific. And we'll move
Beautiful.
to General
Yeah,
managers. report.
This really has been
Thank you.
a labor of love.
It
for
is,
Nasa
I
and the team,
know.
And so,
Well,
thank you.
she and your team have just done spectacular work.
And every year, we can't wait to get back up and check it out.
Bet.
Now we're just chomping at the bit. So we will report back.
And thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, general
Okay.
managers report.
So I don't have much, but really quickly, since we've had a couple people comment on the Golden Mussel, we are accepting boats and at Rollins and Scotts Flat. So if you've been quarantined and you've been in and out of Rollins Lake right now, you are able to do that, but you just need to be quarantined and follow our
The tag
guidelines,
system.
the tag system.
Yes. Okay.
All of that information is updated and very accessible and easily read
Mhm.
on our website, nidwater.com. So please go there if you're planning to come to Rollins or Scotts Flat in the near future. Monica and her team are diligent on ensuring that we are inspecting and ensuring that no boat that should not be on our waters is not there. We're taking extreme precautionary measures because if this mussel is as bad as CDFW is indicating it could happen, and if Peru and Brazil are in any indication, if this invasive mussel gets into our systems, it is absolutely devastating to hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure, all of our conveyance systems, our water treatment facilities, our hydroelectric facilities, our infrastructure to deliver water to our conveyance systems to our agriculture customers and our treated water customers. So we're not taking this lightly at all. We have closed Upper Division. We've closed Jackson Meadows, Milton, and Bowman to all watercraft on that reservoir. We have notified PG&E. We've notified FERC. We've notified everybody that would necessarily need to be notified of these closures. It's on our website. If you have questions, please give us a call. I understand that it is potentially a problem for certain people. However, we just need to see what happens this summer. We need to get through this summer to understand if there's going to be a better opportunity for us next year. We just do not have the capacity, the money, or the funding to get up there to the upper reaches of the reservoir or of the system to monitor and check and make sure that all the do-gooders who say that they're doing good are doing good. These mussels have been found on boats trying to enter Folsom, Oroville, Thermal Hydro Bay. So they are coming up from the Bay Area on these boats. They are trying to get into these reservoir systems and these watersheds. And we simply can't allow it to happen. We own these reservoirs, and our project partners at Forest Service are in agreement with us. And luckily, they're helping us and working forward with us. So that's all I have to say about that.
Got a question on that. Oh, go ahead, Brad.
So, and I apologize, I had not intended to ask this, and it just came to me. Is Spalding is a PG&E reservoir?
Correct.
And does it have the same closures that we do on our upper division?
We have asked Spalding to close their reservoir. I'm sorry, PG&E, yeah.
We've asked them.
Correct.
Okay. That's,
They,
They have or have not?
They have not.
If not,
However,
that's a little chink in our armor then,
it is.
or a big chink.
yeah,
There's a
they-
lot of chinks. And we're gonna do what we can.
Okay.
yeah, we just can do the best we can
Mm.
do.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
so
And Rich,
we use the cuss word. So why hasn't PG&E done the responsible thing for
why
once?
have they done, do we have evidence that they have done the responsible
Well, I
thing
mean, you
in
know,
any of this?
they're again threatening. Is
So I will.
that a legal question?
I will
mean,
say,
can't we,
Rhetorical question.
Rich, I will say that I know that East Bay Mud has followed up with PG&E to ask them to close various reservoirs above their water systems and within their McCollum water system, where they deliver all that water to the East Bay communities. They're as equally as concerned. We have sent letters. I don't have an answer for you.
can we have a closed session and talk about legal pursuit?
We can discuss that.
Huh?
So many legal opportunities with,
You're due for a close.
they are just the gift that keeps.
We're probably
giving.
due for one anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean,
there's-
we're due for one, but like Brad said, there's what's the weakest point? And it's,
A lot.
again, it's PG&E.
Listen, we have. a
Okay,
hand
any other
raised.
questions for
that-
that?
It's brief. This is not agendized.
Right, this is not agendized. Okay. Kevin, I see you have your hand up. If you have a quick, very brief question, we can take it according to our legal counsel. Oh, you're now muted. Kevin, do you want to, there you go. We're ready for you.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
How's it going? You guys are gonna sue PG&E? They're irresponsible. You're the only district that has closed lakes. The only one. The possibility of those mussels getting into your reservoir is like 1 in a billion at those upper lakes. They can't even survive there. If you do the research, look at Department of Fish and Game's website, look at the study done. They can't survive in those lakes very long. I can live in the Arctic for a couple days before I freeze to death in the wintertime.
Thank you for your
Rich
comment.
Johansson, Greg Jones, you guys are gonna get voted out.
Thank you for your comment.
Bring it on, Kevin.
Okay,
Okay, moving on.
continue with the general manager's report.
Last comment, Ricky, you had mentioned surplus property brokers. We had
Yes.
closed our statement of qualifications last Thursday. We've received eight, I believe, Chris, brokers who have responded to that. We are reviewing them right now. Anticipate bringing back to the board on the 11th of June, a request for contracting with a local broker.
Okay. And since I just want to ask a question, I presume we're open to do contracting with more than one, right? I mean, I could see there's some natural
I
splits.
presume we are.
Okay, just,
And-
it seems to make sense.
Are we also,
Possible.
are we also looking at title companies?
No, we look at brokers.
Brokers.
Just brokers, and brokers will choose their title company?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Title companies would not represent.
The response
Fine.
went,
Yeah.
the statement of qualifications went to both Nevada and Placer
Mhm.
Association of Realtors, and it went to all of their membership. We received 8 in response, and we're reviewing those statement of qualifications.
And you could send out the criteria that you're judging them on?
They have that.
They have that.
Should be in
They
the
have, but we
RFP.
don't.
It was in the RFP.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
No, you have.
Okay.
I haven't seen it. By the way, buyers choose their title.
Yeah.
Not.
And that is the end of my report.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we did want,
Yes.
Jennifer said in her email, we would have a water supply update.
Yeah, so I kind of knew I was on the hook.
Yeah. Thank you, Chip.
I should say tour. This Tor is integral in putting these numbers together. Okay, here we are. The latest water supply update for you. And we've kind of covered these before. There, thank you, Chris. So you should know what the color backgrounds mean, but basically the blue shaded area is our 138-year average for precipitation at our Bowman Lake reporting station. The red line is our current year. It looks as though we're going to finish out this year at or just below average. That was the good news, but as you know, there's more to this story. We're
Mhm.
get to it. As of this current date, we're at 101%. I don't see much rain in the forecast. I think we're pretty much flatlining here on out.
Mhm.
Our April 1st snow survey came in at a pretty good number at 98% of average, which was really good. Most of the northern part of the state had pretty good snow survey results, but since that date, it's been very dry. It's been a very dry spring, warm. You can see that that blue line in all of these graphs that you see here, while it was above the shaded area earlier on, that which was above 100%, is now well below, and we're now only in the 30% range, which means we've had a warm and early runoff. So for NID, that normally would be concerning, but honestly, we can't get any of that water down to where we need it anyway. And you can see the result of not having access to the flows through the Spalding facilities, that our reservoirs filled really early. They're basically topped off at this point, and we're just living on what we have through Rollins and Scotts Flat. But ultimately, we're at 95% of total capacity. Now, the reservoirs of most concern we'll get to here. So Scotts Flat Reservoir, we've got the forecast for you. The green line is what we did last year through this emergency outage. The red line is what we expect to see this year. We're a little bit behind this year already, but PG&E indicates they're progressing on schedule. And so when we fold in some return to service flows that we anticipate, you can see we actually end up being pretty much on par with where we were last year at Scotts Flat. Rollins Reservoir is a much different story. So we're behind quite a bit at Rollins. You can see the green line there on the top left. That's where we were last year. The red and orange dashed line is where we're at this year. And you can see as you track that red and orange dotted line, as it moves through on into July, you see the orange line kind of stops and hovers right about where we were last year. That is kind of a best case scenario where PG&E thinks they'll at least get some flows starting through Spalding 1, and they'll be testing flows. They won't be very high flows, but some flows will help. The red line is taking that further out. So we have two different schedules from them. One where we anticipated testing flows not to return until mid-July. That's what that red line indicates. And pretty low level. That's nearly 6,000 acre feet lower than we experienced in 2024.
And Deadpool is?
Deadpool's around 16,000 acre feet. But I'll be honest with you, Rich, we haven't been to this elevation really ever. So I would imagine, although I can tell you that's what Deadpool is, the water quality once you get down in those elevations is going to be terrible. So again, this is why we're emphasizing conservation is the key. It's really needed. With that, I can give you a little bit of an update. So we had a call with PG&E on yesterday. The Spalding 1 Horn B repairs are on track. They have got the liner in. All the segments are in. Now they're just welding all the seams. So that's good. They still anticipate being done on schedule. The contractor is also putting steel cladding on the support structures at the outlet of the horns, and that's moving along well as well. The key date for NID, so their completion date says August 2nd, which is way out there. But when you look at what their schedule is, the last month or so of it is testing the facility. So we are actually getting flows during that last month. The key date for NID is filling of that tunnel. And right now they anticipate that being somewhere that first, second week of July. That's key to us because that allows us to bypass some flows into the South Yuba Canal and get some water into the DS Canal. If we don't get that, early, and we may even run into it before that. We do anticipate some rotating canal outages in Nevada County this year. So it's pretty crucial for us. We've emphasized the importance of that to PG&E, and they are hopefully trying to beat that date and get a little earlier, but right now they're just saying they are on schedule.
What about boat ramp closures in Rollins? At what point would we have to do that?
So they are listed here.
Yeah.
You see that
I
solid
just
red.
couldn't quite make it out here. I'm sorry.
It's basically the first part of July. If you take the worst case scenario, it's that first part of July. Most all the boat ramps are out.
Okay.
You were talking about outages, rotating outages in Nevada, Scotts Flat side or Rollins?
That'd be the Scotts Flat side. So it would be very similar to what we experienced last year.
Even
And
those,
we would minimize them, keep them to about 3 days and rotate to the next canal. That's the plan of attack for now. On the Rollins side, if we do start seeing that red option coming up, we'll be discussing rotating outages in Placer County as well.
same timing.
We have to study which canals we can rotate with the labor we have. It's very hard to do this, and you have to find
Do it
matching
both.
canals, but it's a work in progress, so we'll report more on that in the future.
I would be remiss, and Brad would be sad. Micro ponds would solve that for us.
Got it. There's no wager on micro ponds today.
I know we did have wagers in another area.
Okay, moving to the next. Spalding 2 update. As you all recall, they tried to put the powerhouse online, had some issues, took it back offline. We don't foresee that coming back online for the foreseeable future. However, PG&E has put a semi-permanent bypass structure in that facility. So when they fill the tunnel, they'll be able to bypass the powerhouse and get water into the South Yuba Canal. And we should be able to receive full flows in the South Yuba Canal once the tunnel is full.
Nice.
The Spalding intake, you may have heard about that. The PG&E experienced some problems. Their intake tower, it's a tower inside of Lake Spalding. It has an upper and a lower. The lower one, it was totally impacted with debris, and some of the support structures had broke. They've since got divers in there. They've removed some of the debris. They say the damage doesn't look quite as bad as they anticipated. So it looks as though once the tunnel is full, we'll have enough flows to meet our demands once that's available. And then last but not least, the Spalding low-level outlet, not expected to be worked on probably until 26 or 27. So ultimately, as long as the Spalding 1 powerhouse is available and that tunnel is full, we will be unaffected by that. So we're okay there. So that's the latest. Fingers crossed they at least hit this July 6th tunnel fill date or earlier. That's really what the key is.
That's the key. Okay, cool.
Nice.
Okay, quickly moving on. I'll move these real quick. The rest of the state is in really good shape. Almost every reservoir you see there is at or above 100%. And some of this has to do with the change of the rules of flood inundation. They used to have to hold these reservoirs back for flooding purposes. They've loosened those rules, and so they're maximizing these things, which is a great move. And I only bring this up because, every year you hear about drought. We are already starting to hear it that, well, although the reservoirs are full, Southern California didn't get as much rain. Well, that's true, but there's a lot of backup still, so. And there's the drought monitor for you. We're still in normal, while Southern California is pretty dry, but actually that's improved a little bit over the last few months. 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, near normal, although we know we're going to have a hot spell in the next 2 or 3 days, but it's quick lived. So fingers crossed it truly is quick lived. 6 to 10 day precip, there calls for some showers in the future. It's that time of year where a shower makes the screen. Even if it's only 1/10 of an inch, because we just don't usually get much rain during this time of year. So that's why that is reflected the way it is. Monthly, it's going to be hot. Welcome to summer. Precip, equal chances, your best guess. And then the seasonal drought outlook looks about the same. And then treated water use, we're asking for conservation. We're not getting that 20%, but we're getting some. So we just sent out the letter, as you heard earlier in the meeting, asking for all customers to conserve, and we're starting to get some feedback on that. So fingers crossed that message is heard and conservation will pick up.
Hey, just to clarify, irrigating every other day is a good policy anyway for any irrigation. And that does not equate to 50% reduction.
Agreed.
Mhm. Right.
And we will call that individual back, but ultimately, if you're a treated water customer, the
Yeah.
less water you use, the less your bill. That's how it works.
That's right.
So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chip. Okay. Does that conclude the
it.
report?
Yes.
Okay. So from there, we'll move to Board of Directors comments, items, reports.
I have a couple things here. I was very fortunate to do the Nevada County Ag Tour. I've also done the Placer County Ag Tour. It was beautiful to see the contrast. The usage of the lands, how it's done, but how instrumental NID is to both of the operations. So it was very, very informative and I loved it. I'm still on the bandwagon about raising Rollins and doing the feasibility study. I know Gabe has got it on his list. That's wonderful. I'm gonna throw something out there, might be a little controversial, but I was just wondering if, since NID is a Nevada irrigation district, but we also have part of your district and part of my district in Placer County, I'm wondering if once a year we might have a board meeting in Placer County. Something like that, just an idea. The last thing on here is if I could get Dustin to define for me either here or later, the reservoir refill criteria.
Why don't we sit down before a whiteboard and
Okay,
Yeah.
you got it.
we'll walk through that?
So that's a whole workshop.
You gotta have it to sell it and you gotta have it again to refill.
I need it on a whiteboard, I guess.
Oh, wait.
Laplace transforms, or are we just gonna stick with differential equations?
Yeah, right.
Rich, are you done?
Uh,
Rich?
Yeah, Farm Bureau was out 2 weeks ago. Thank you. It was great. Very nice. Last Thursday, I had, two senior engineer managers from Sony Semiconductor Corporation out. And one marketing guy out of the Bay Area. These guys were out of Tokyo. And they have a prototype soil moisture sensor that is supposed to eliminate all the other problems. And they wanted to go over how would it work in our application in Nevada County and also the cost factor. And it's quite a unique, very high-tech, small little unit, but costly in the ground type thing. I also want to, and the marketer also a year ago was out. He claims, also from a different Japanese firm, an organic approved polymer that is so much better than mulch for retention of water. But it is, I mean, they're coming out with these polymers that swell up and then release out, and great water savings. So anyway, they were out the ranch. Just want to say the fishing on the Sacramento River is incredible. I want to give kudos to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife for dumping the salmon fry at Calusa, because that's where all the striped bass are. Remarkable.
Okay.
Just quickly, 18-inch striped bass had 9 salmon fry in it. 20, they're just loaded up. These bass are eating all the salmon. And up here, we're worried about salmon habitat. And yet when you get down there, the bass are eating them.
Need to eat bass.
Thank you.
But it is, yeah, well,
Thank you. Brad,
anyway.
or is your report complete?
Yeah, no, I think we'll get into carbon sequestration another day.
Oh, sounds like it. Brad, did you want to give us your?
Yeah, I'm just fielding a lot of calls about mussels, and it sounds
Mhm.
like I'm not the only one, and people are pretty interested in that. And so I've been trying to learn, and I'm looking forward to a statewide program that I spoke with Monica about. It sounds like there is some kind of a universal thing that's in the works, and that'll be great when that comes about. Did the ag tour, and I lost a wager when we went to Rich's. We got to witness the micro storage and micro ponds, and I made a wager, and he didn't say that actual word enough times to fulfill my my winning requirement. But it was a great highlight. We got to highlight a bunch of different irrigation techniques and at different enterprises, and it was a great time. And that's all I got.
Thank you. Chris?
No, nothing to report because I haven't been doing anything except recuperate and I'm getting there. Glad to be here.
Well, we are so glad to have you here. Really, really glad.
So yes,
Okay.
long haul.
Thank you. And my report is brief, but for you, Brad, as we were talking, Greg and I went out to the Cascade Shores Homeowners Association and did a presentation that was largely around how Scotts Flat is going to be and is impacted by the PG&E issue, but also the golden mussels. And there was a lot of interest there. And interesting, though, I would say, Greg, there was a pretty good participation, and there was one person who was pretty grumpy about it. But the rest of the folks there said, hey, you know, we're glad you're protecting our water supply. Thank you very much. We think you're doing the right thing. Keep it, you know, keep going. And anyway, the point of that is really that getting out into the community as Greg and I did and making these presentations can help build the public awareness of what we're doing and how big the problem is and why it's a problem. So that was a cool thing to do. So with that, if there's no other comment, or we will adjourn. Thank you.